here goes the first episode of VESA Podcast. I did start something like this around 2017 or 18, I believe, earlier. It was called We Love Decentralized, and there were some notable guests already. They were related quite a lot to the art projects that I was doing at the time. I was doing a commission, for example, for the Litecoin Foundation, and therefore Charlie Lee graced me to come and do an interview with me for the podcast. But I didn't really have enough time to keep it up. And I also think I had slightly not the correct perception of how long it would take to make a successful podcast and so that it becomes self-sustaining and so forth. So the patience timeline that I had was too short. So now I'm starting this with a different kind of perspective, which is that it's probably going to be around 2 years or something like that before it starts to get those kinds of viewerships and listeners that I would maybe hope that the reach is going to start being at some point. But the main objective here is to have a hang with really, really bright minds and exceptional individuals that we've met through VESA Digital all across the world. From my travels in America, as well as living in London earlier, and then now recently in Dubai. And of course, in Dubai, you meet absolutely everyone. So we have a large amount of people within our rosters that I think are fascinating people to just have a conversation with and throw ideas back and forth. And of course, they're welcome to plug whatever it is that they're doing at the moment. It's a part of the nature of the podcasting thing. But primarily, it's going to be about connecting with people. It's to share ideas and be inspired by others, and not to have it for a while as anything that is even going to make any money or anything like that. It's hopefully going to be resonant with people who we were resonant with anyway when we were meeting in person, or for whatever reason our paths have crossed. So this is the thing. And the first episode is going to be with David Orban, who was very eloquent and graceful to give 2 hours of his time. Our mutual friend Hamad brought him to a show of mine in NFT at the Dubai Mall, the digital gallery. And we hit it off. I think he's a very interesting guy. I did a bunch of research on him, listening to his different takes on AI and entrepreneurship. And he's obviously an early crypto investor and OG in Ethereum and so forth. And a fascinating and warm person to talk to. So we shared some ideas. His answers are kind of like symphonies. And I really do hope you enjoy it. It's the first episode of the VESA Podcast. Let's go. Here I am with my guest, David Orban. And I'm ever so happy to see you again, my friend. We had a great chat in Dubai whilst we were there. And you came and graced my art opening with NFT at Dubai Mall with your presence, and this was you certainly left an impact on me with the thoughts that we shared in those two different moments that we had together over there. And let me just get the introduction out of the way for the few people who don't know who you are. So David Orban is an investor and an entrepreneur with a background in artificial intelligence, an early adopter of Bitcoin and blockchain technologies. He started promoting decentralization as a natural consequence of exponential technologies 10 years ago, so an OG. And currently, he's the founder and CEO of Action Year, an AI-powered startup coaching and data-driven investor platform, which is fascinating that we're going to get into as we progress with this conversation. And you can follow him on X with his account at David Orban, and I'll of course put this all on the show notes as well, and many other platforms listed on davidorban.com/follow. So a very warm welcome to the show, my friend, and I do think we're going to have a great time talking about some fascinating subjects. But first, before anything, how are you? What's been going on?
I'm good. I'm constantly traveling and enjoying it greatly, meeting wonderful people like you, It is the joy of going at various continents, cities, events. But when you see me with this background, which is not, it's not a digital background. These are actually my books, and they cover all four of the walls of my studio. That is a house I have in Italy, in northern Italy, and it is always great to be here. I have my fireplace going, my wife upstairs probably preparing some dinner, and it is great to have somewhere to go home to.
Yeah, I do remember when we were sitting at a very nice hotel in Dubai, and this waiter came to us and said, "If you would like some pizza," and this face that you gave, it's like, I live in Italy, my friend. I'm not gonna.
I love eating all kinds of food, and Italian food is very popular wherever you are. So when a group of friends gets together and we discuss, hey, where we should be eating, Italian often comes up. And I don't like to impose myself, but I may end up chiming in if we could pick something else, because I have plenty of wonderful Italian in Italy.
No. And to clarify, and not to, it's also the impression that I have, which is not often the case with technologists, is that I was left with a very warm feeling of you have a very human way of interacting with people and sort of being. So I wasn't implying that you were being too elitist about it, but it is a one thing to have pizza in Milano that it is, let's say, here in Helsinki, even though there are some great pizzerias here, but I do there are some distinctions that are worth maybe mentioning. But yeah, there's so many different things that we can take this into the direction of. And I was listening to many of your different kinds of talks, from your TED Talks to different podcasts that you've been doing over the years. And one thing that came across is, again, speaking to your personality, is that, yeah, you're in these very advanced and high technology driven things that can be quite cold, but you do have an inner science as well about you. And I do remember this about our conversations, that they went from spirituality to our machine-like nature and this kind of a thing. And in one particular thing that stood out a little bit, that you went on this Vipassana retreat, which was quite fascinating. And I would love to have a conversation around how this being in this silence for such a long time, and especially now in the time of our smartphones, did you kind of relapse back into being 24/7 with your mobile phone, or can you actually integrate that experience from that retreat?
The starting point of that was exactly my desire to understand better my relationship to deep silence. And that in turn, that curiosity came because actually a year ago exactly, for the first time after around 40 years, my wife and I were not physically together for a more extended period of time, because our daughter lives in Seoul, and she went visiting her for 3 months. And we would be speaking to each other practically every day, but I would be alone in the house. And of course, they would joke about me dying of hunger or smothered by unwashed pieces of clothing after a short period, and were a bit offended when that didn't happen, because I showed a level of autonomy and resilience that they didn't expect I could exhibit. But on my side, even though, of course, I was missing her, and it was itself a nice proof of me loving her, and I was happy when she came home, and even though I travel, as I said, I would be gone a few weeks and not many months at a time. What was a great surprise is how I felt very content and very accomplished just by sitting in silence, and as far as the external world would see, doing nothing. And that really was very interesting to me. And without having had any contact before, or having actually looked deeply what it was, I just looked up Vipassana, which I have heard about, with the expression silent retreat, realized that there was a retreat that was being organized, signed up, was alerted that there was a long wait list. Then a few months later, I was alerted that a place actually freed up. And this happened in January, and then the retreat was in August. And so finally in August, I was able to go through the process. And it was really wonderful. I can strongly recommend it. It will, of course, depend on the teacher and on many other things of how your specific experience is going to be. Also, it is not simple, both in terms of organizing it and being in the knowledge that the world can go and be fine without you for 9-10 days, and that you will not be disturbed by any kind of emergency while there. And it is also not easy in terms of the discipline and the dedication that it requires, because from 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning until 9, 10 in the evening, you dedicate as much time as possible to deep meditation, of which a few are guided, especially for novices like me. But 24/7, not only you don't speak, or other people don't speak to you, you don't read, you don't write, not only on your devices, but not even on paper. No books, no newspapers, not even looking each other in the eye, because that kind of contact already is a kind of communication that must be avoided.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a beautiful monastery in the middle of the Italian Alps, but we were recommended, if possible, not to leave the monastery to go out in the garden, because that also would represent distraction. And none of this was imposed. It wasn't, the discipline was something that you would want to keep, not something that
Benefits them,
or others would impose on you. And it was a really very, very interesting experience. And to finish answering your question in the last part, it is recommended that you should then keep the process and the benefits that the process give by meditating at least 1 hour per day, if possible 2 hours. And no, I am not doing it, but having gone through the experience, I know I am up to it, right? I know I can embrace it, and from time to time I do, right? And it can be an hour, as it should be, or it can be less. It can even be something as simple as a few deep breaths, just tasting your ability to fill your lungs, and then exhaling. And it is really fantastic has been for me, and I very much recommend it.
See, the reason also why I'm so curious about that is that I had a conversation with a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago where he was quite adamant and very afraid of the moment when we start to install the chip, either Elon Musk's Neuralink and so forth. And I was, while I understand it very well, the point that I made that he laughed out loud quite a bit was that I said that I think that the chip was installed 20 years ago already, but it was done in the form of software. And what you can see in our current culture at the moment, with regards to the culture wars, but in general, in how people communicate online, it's very ones and zeros. It's very black and white, and you're either in this camp or that camp, or then you can't. And it's so crunchy. It feels very. Let's say if humanity before used sails and went with the wind, now it's diesel powered and sort of forced through in one way. So you could say that from the beginning of technology, we've been becoming more and more binary in this certain way that we interact with one another. So I was kind of curious of how potentially this experience with Vipassana might make you a better technologist, and what kind of insight would that perspective kind of I don't know even how to form that question, but I'm sure you catch my drift from it.
Thank you. So people who are driven to self-reflection ask themselves through their lives whether what they experience is subjective, or even if it is objective, characterizes their own personal unique trajectory, or if it is a kind of experience that is worth articulating and then comparing with experiences from others because it may characterize the times that they are living. And in my case, this is a real curiosity. I ask myself quite frequently, which is the case? For example, in the past few years, I have been very openly and joyfully communicating with others my subjective experience of getting old for the first time. And I have been comparing this with the experience that I have already had of being young for the first time and growing up for the first time, and savoring it similarly. And this is an example of something that each of us go through, hopefully. Growing old is better than the alternative of not growing old when you die and die potentially young. But whether it is different than the experience of others, the rhythms and the features of that experience are only weakly influenced by the particular time. So someone growing old 1,000 years ago could compare notes with me, very likely. On the other hand, there are also experiences which I am pretty sure join billions of people today in the world. And if someone just 100 years ago would see us, they would have a very hard time relating and understanding what we are doing, why we are doing it, and they would lack a lot of the keys that would allow them to decode and to understand the context of our behavior. A simple example of this is the evolution of our attention span. And it is easy to fall into the cynical view that our attention span is shortening and that we are unable to concentrate, which is true on one hand, but it is a simplistic view because, yes, just to talk about myself, trained myself to enjoy short form videos. And it doesn't matter if on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram Reels, because it is one of the few formats that are platform independent. TikTok has been so successful that it forced everyone else to adopt the same format. They wouldn't want to do so, but they couldn't resist. So yeah, I spend maybe half an hour or whatever it is just watching videos 15, 30 seconds at a time. And even 5 or 10 years ago, if I told myself that is what I would be doing, it would have been mind-blowingly weird. However, I also spend time listening to podcasts that are many hours long.
I was about to say.
And I listen to them at 1.5, 1.7. If I go higher than that, the speed is still intelligible, but I realize that I pretend to listen rather than listening really, and my ability to follow drifts radically. So around 1.5 speed is for me the ideal, and I go through 2, 3, 4 hours of podcasts when I am flying somewhere or I'm driving somewhere. And for example, when I'm driving, it is a great way to be awake and to be so in a manner that is probably minimally impacting my ability to drive and to react to the road, what is going on around me. So these two things have to be considered together as we look at how the world is influencing us and is changing. Now, should we take advantage of the technology tools that complement our natural senses and our natural abilities to absorb and to digest information about the world and to prioritize the types of actions that we should then enact in order to make those pieces of information useful in reaching our goals? Oh, definitely. We have been doing that for tens of thousands of years, and the new tools are extremely powerful, irresistible, and some of the reasons why they are so good at capturing us is exactly because they are the equivalent of the high fructose food that makes us fat. So as a consequence, exactly because we are programmed to take advantage of them to the extreme, we have to be self-aware and self-conscious in how we use them and modulate our use of this power. I am relatively unsuccessful in doing that with food because I am fat, and I probably need to be better at modulating my use of technology tools or information tools as well in order to be effective and not be overwhelmed by the joy of just jumping from here to there and think of the implications and so on. But in the meantime, I am exhilarated by what is becoming possible.
Yeah, there was a podcaster called Chris who brought this idea about that. It used to be that you're the sum total of the 5 friends that you hang about with the most, but he says that it's probably more true at this point that you are the sum total of the 5 different podcasts that you listen. And while it's probably an amalgam of those two, because it's a very different thing to have a private conversation with someone who you trust than for many other life reasons that you have through friendship and those kinds of things, as well as the ideas that you then kind of share with the podcast. But it's certainly enriched my life so much. And I do listen to across the board these ideas because it helps me put together sort of grand concepts. And I wonder if you would humor me, because there's a specific thing that it's almost like a comedy bit, but I would call this a philosophy bit that I came across just a while ago. And I would love to present it to you and have a conversation around it and how you would see this, because I know you also have a background in understanding religion. And in particular in the West, what I do find is that the Christianity and the Christian church has lost its footing. It's sort of lost a lot of its core values in trying to adapt to this new climate of where we are. And also, if you have the experience of going into a church right now, they have these old wooden seats that seem a little torturous, as well as you're meant to be singing these hymns that take you back 200 years, and it's a very old paradigm sort of, and it hasn't really evolved with our times. And I came to thinking that what was quite interesting about what the church used to do is in terms of if you look at it as a carrot and stick type situation, is that the carrot was that they built these magnificent structures that took you to this transcendent state and awe. And they haven't really been building anything for a long time. And this is a part of the premise that I started thinking that what if it is, because a lot of these big structures that we have around us seem to be, whether it's from the press or finances or whatever, they're sort of crumbling and being put back together in a different kind of way. And the first real MMA fighter was Bruce Lee. And I have such a profound love for what he did, because he was such an example for the world, as in that he was perceived one way in America, which was more like a slave or kind of second-grade citizen. And then, of course, in the East, when he started teaching the Oriental self-defense techniques to the Westerners, he got a bunch of crap from the Eastern side and he got a bunch of crap from the Western side. And he sort of brought them together by saying, it is what is the most functional that is important, not the hierarchy of the specific kind of club that you're in when you're in either karate or jiu-jitsu or this kind of thing. And I remember as a kid kind of growing up that there were these karate people who were saying that kickboxers are worse than them. And I, of course, knew that they were full of crap, but there wasn't really a way of how that could be sort of showcased in a good kind of way, which evolved into MMA. And in MMA, mixed martial arts, then all of a sudden there were moments in time where, for example, jiu-jitsu guys would dominate absolutely everyone because the other ones didn't have any ground game. But then it became, after a while, that you have to have a minimum level of black level jiu-jitsu to even enter the ring, and other things on top of that became how it sort of becomes a more and more compactful fighting mythology and the kind of king of the heap, because it's combining the best parts of everything. And I thought that, what if this is actually ongoing underneath our eyes at the moment, which is that this is also happening to religion? We're already having all of these different kinds of conversation. And for example, Jordan Peterson will have a big lecture on the foundations of Christianity, but he will bring in ayahuasca and the psychedelics. He will bring in all the different kinds of influences that are kind of the things that you probably wouldn't be hearing in any lectures in church and so forth. And I felt that this is something that the world actually needs, because there is a spiritual void, and we have for the most part, we do feel betrayed by our institutions, and they fail to kind of deliver the needs that we have in a kind of compact manner, like as in a podcast or this kind of way. And I think that this needs to happen for our spiritual foundations, that they come together in a set ring where they start to have at it with their different ideas in order for us to discover what is the most functional for our coming global world. And we're already there, and we kind of need that solution. And as part of that, and I don't really mind sharing this because I'm not bothered whether I'm the one who implements this, but for example, the Christian church could implement their new awe structures in the metaverse, and there could be an AI Jesus, for example, someone who you could have a personal relationship to as your spiritual coach. You could have some of the masters, and they could endorse this. Now, there's a lot of different dangers that come with that, because obviously then what you put into the AI Jesus as an algorithm can be corrupted along the way or not done right. And I'm not going to go into the trials and tribulations of more deeply than that. But I was wondering if from an AI technology perspective and from your experiences and how you see this, could you bounce some ideas what that maybe brings up for you?
I like to recommend people to be immodest and humble. Being immodest allows you to express positions and opinions without retreating into a position of subservience to authority, which often deserves your admiration, but sometimes it doesn't. And especially in rapidly evolving times, it is a bit better, in my opinion, to err on the side of skepticism when you receive some knowledge through authority than in times when things don't change that fast. And on the other side, those who are in the position of authority should better check their own assumptions more frequently too. It would be healthy for them. Being humble means, on the other hand, that you definitely recognize that there are so many people who are so much better in not only achieving a deeper level of specialization in a given field than you, but they may also be smarter in reasoning through the various steps that connect the dots of that particular field or across different fields. As far as religion is concerned, I am definitely not a specialist. I am maybe not even an amateur, but I am driven by curiosity in recognizing that the universal feature we share of being in awe by the beauty of the experience of living and in front of the joint mystery of the universe and its features and our ability, which is unfathomable, of understanding and explaining it, is a set of circumstances that give rise to what in the past religion solved for most people, or maybe everyone. And today, we are, or many of us are uncomfortable accepting revealed religions as the starting point to design a life of purpose and the life of self-inquiry, because the precepts and the dogmatic, necessarily unavoidably dogmatic approach of those revealed religions need an abandonment of the critical stance and a position of inquiry and curiosity and skepticism towards authority that makes it incompatible with revealed religions. Now, the reason why it is useful to wonder how this is going to evolve, how it is already evolving, is because evidently a lot of people feel the need to put a given label to this complex set of yearnings. And I realized this when the Berlin Wall fell. I was born in Hungary originally. I grew up under the communist regime. I left in '79 Hungary and was going back regularly. And when the Berlin Wall fell and a lot of things could be experimented with, that the state previously repressed, the whole country, as every country in Central and Eastern Europe, was invaded by advertising, by pyramid get-rich-quick schemes, by all kinds of scams, and many other things, as well as religion. It resurged in a manner that surprised me, including relatives of mine who suddenly became religious, and I was just observing them and the various well-wishing messages that they would send during Christmas or Easter. And I would be wondering, like, no, you were not religious, and this fervent participation today is very surprising to me. But evidently, they were not alone. Millions, tens, hundreds of millions of people jumped on the opportunity of embracing religion. So yeah, I respect that need, as well as I feel, and I believe you were representing that position as well, that we should be courageous in designing new answers to these questions. And there are, examples of religions that have been founded in the 20th century or in the 21st century. Many of the people who will be watching this or listening to this are familiar with Scientology, that was designed by the science fiction author Ron Hubbard. And with Moonism, that was born in South Korea in the 20th century as a new religion as well. Another one that I would highlight is the Terasem movement, which characterizes itself as a trans religion, and it is particularly aligned with the transhumanist philosophy, which itself defines humanity as characterized by its ability to understand, observe, and overcome its limitations, moving beyond what was the framework that defined it before, constantly renewing and constantly exploring. So there are many, many ways. And what I am wondering, without having been able to give an answer yet, is how can we, after recognizing the need, satisfy the need without building new walls that separate and isolate, without building new dogmatic approaches, but find strength in rituals that potentially unite. A few years ago, I was invited and then didn't happen, and I was a little bit disappointed because I was looking forward to give a sermon at the Unitarian Universalist Church in New York. And Unitarian Universalism is a religious movement that is extremely inclusive. And since I didn't go, I didn't have the time and the inclination to then go deeper into how they manage to be inclusive the way they are while still existing. Because in a very similar way to how our bodies have barriers and have immune systems that recognize and fight that which is not us, similarly, if there are no barriers and you do not define what is in and what is out, well, you run the risk of dissolving the identity of a movement. So my curiosity about how the Unitarian Universalist movement maintains its identity while being extremely inclusive remains unanswered today. But the need of understanding what to build and how to build remains. Especially, I love rituals, and these rituals, including the Catholic rituals, are exhilarating, entrancing, amazing. The buildings, the robes, the chants,
magic.
The books.
There's a bit of magic there.
It's such a spectacle, and in the 60s, the Catholic Church tried to modernize itself. They abandoned Latin, embraced the local language wherever it was for the Mass, and they started on a path in order to make the Catholic religion more compatible with the modern world. This was the Second Vatican Council, 1962. And now, 50 years later, there is actually a new kind of counter-reformation that aims to bring Latin back and aims to dismantle the relatively timid ways through which Catholicism tried to open up and be more compatible with the modern world. Very, very interesting. And I'm again not a specialist, not following it closely enough to understand why and how and what are the various dynamics. But if we could build spiritual rituals that reinforce our shared admiration for the beauty of the universe and for the power of human curiosity and achievement, that would sanctify the beautiful scientific revolutions and engineering miracles that are roaming Mars today and are exploring space and the depth of oceans, and have uplifted billions of people from poverty. These are things that I would definitely immediately sign up for, to cherish and to exalt every Sunday.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the particular reason why I brought that up as well is that I do see that there's a bit of a religion that is forming in its infant stage, beyond also the transhumanism, which is just sort of this blanket statement that we live in a simulation, which we've heard from Elon Musk and the like many times, and it just sort of, the implications of it are so childish that, if I don't claim to be an expert with sort of Vedic texts or even the more nuanced mystic kind of things from the major religions, but I would say that anyone who just sort of blanketly throws around the "we live in a simulation" essentially is saying the same thing. They're saying we are living in a God universe. That we just don't call it God. We say it's something that the whoever is the puppet master of that particular realm that is then the simulation. And those kinds of things could be quite easily dismantled or taken much, much further just by going into some of these that we rightly so many times think are very dogmatic and old-fashioned and not beholden to our identity or where we're going. But it does feel like that people who in particular are in charge of and innovating in the AI realm, innovating in our metaverse and those kinds of places. And if you have a very flippant attitude towards the questions that we've been wrestling with for thousands and thousands of years, and not in this fanatical way, but just the very questions of who we are and why we are, if the same people who are crafting where we're going and potentially having a very kind of dominant role with AI and think that these aren't important questions to evolve with and integrate into it, I would say that that kind of consciousness is going to bring about a nightmare in the transhumanist movement once we really go a little bit further even into this and people start uploading them into a cloud after they die. And that just sounds like the worst hellscape to me possible without any kind of transcendent mindset. So I kind of, this is why I keep having this conversation in a technology space to some degree, and especially at my own expense, because many people will think that I'm a weirdo and or some sort of a religious fanatic. But I'm just doing it as for the same reason, let's say, that Elon Musk is saying that we need some sort of kind of regulation around AI and we need to have some sort of guardrails of how we're going to do it. This is a part of the conversation that needs to be brought into the guardrails of what we're about to build with technology. And we would be very, very silly indeed not to incorporate some of this wisdom from thousands of years of how to be a good person, because and I'll finish my little rant with this, that I don't remember who just said it, but it is no guarantee that even if you're a good person, that life will treat you well. And this is maybe in the sort of the Book of Job or these kinds of things. And if we don't have any tradition or any ritual how to deal with difficulty and all these different kinds of things that life throws at us, which is often not a very kind package that is delivered straight to face without asking, we are looking for answers and these stories and narratives from our devices, and we're looking for them through our technology. And this is why I think it's an important conversation, especially with regards to AI, how we're going to be bringing that about and who are the people who are going to consume it for those reasons. Why are we building this and who are we?
So we mentioned before the reverberations and the interactions between the individual trajectories of one's life and the broader context of the kind of world they live in, the kind of civilization that is supporting them. And it is objectively true that 400 or 500 years ago, let's say in medieval Europe, at a very, very large degree, your life would be defined by where you were born, who were your parents. If you were a farmer, which is 90+% probability, you would be born, grow up, and then die as a farmer. And the alternative was so improbable that we only would speak about the possible alternative as a fairy tale. The seventh son leaving the village, fighting and killing the dragon, and marrying the princess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the seventh son had a different trajectory. Most probably, he died of hunger in the village. And if he tried to leave the village, he would be killed by bandits or by the feudal lord himself, because the villagers were indentured servants who didn't have the right to leave the boundaries and just wander off. Whatever changes happened in that world during those times, and there are plenty of changes, we are constantly reevaluating our understanding of the Middle Ages and introducing nuances on what was actually happening and how did people live and things like that. But admittedly, if you invented something that improved maybe the way that you would be selling you would work the land, well, that improvement, that invention took a long time to go from one place to another. Hundreds of years to spread across the Euro-Asian continent, for example. And as a consequence, people had plenty of time to adapt, plenty of time to get accustomed to the new ways, plenty of time to consider whether to embrace it or reject it, and what would the implications be for their lives and the lives of their children, and so on. Around the times of the Industrial Revolution, and ever more so during the 19th, 20th century, and universally recognized now in the 21st, things change faster than we can die. And this was at the Berlin Chaos Computer Club conference, the most memorable slide shown by Brad Pettis, who later went on to found MakerBot, the 3D printing company. Things change faster than we can die, which means that even if we don't want to, even if we are not ready, we have to adapt to the changes, or the changes will kill us. Now, since all of us have certain limits to our adaptability, this actually means that for more and more people, as the world changes, but they cannot adapt to those changes, they kind of throw in the towel of their cognitive ability to interpret the world. And as the world becomes impossible to decode, they become subscribers to every or any possible type of conspiracy theory, which gives them easy answers to complicated questions, or the retreat to ancient Neolithic answers, which are given in the sacred texts of revealed religions, which may or may not be evolutionarily fit to give them answers that would be adequate to the challenges of the world around them. And that is why the Clarke's third law, which is the one most often cited, is applicable here. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And the first two are worth remembering as well, because they are equally wonderful. They say, when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he's almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he's very probably wrong. That is law number one. And law number two is the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible, right? And before I go back to answering your question, which was more specifically about AI, as well as the simulation hypothesis, this is why it is healthy today to be skeptical about wisdom coming from authority. Not because we can do our own research and there is, a cabal of scientists that are trying to do the bidding of whatever elite group of this or that. That is not a healthy way of thinking. But the reason is actually simpler. We live ever longer lives, and we do not have the social governance mechanisms yet in place to allow a refreshing generational change to take place, where rather than people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, politicians and scientists and intellectuals and authors and chefs and artists dominating the world scene, people in their 20s and 30s and 40s are given a chance to emerge. When we colonize Mars, I will be very old, and I hope there will be a law that old people will be sent to Mars. It will be good for them because lower gravity will help with their joints and their arthritis and whatever. And it will be good for Earth that will get rid of the old people without killing them. And it is a real problem because we are always told you have to respect the elderly, you have to trust their wisdom. No, their wisdom was born in a world that is not the world of today anymore. And they have a lot of experience, very useful experience, and a lot of that experience is not applicable anymore. The half-life of a lot of information is shortening, and the half-life of experience and wisdom is shortening with it as well. So, AI is such a complex set of memes, and is such a complex set of scientific and mathematical and the engineering approaches, as well as, especially in the last few years, it is enabling incredible products and services to be implemented that are delivering on science fiction-like dreams we have had for decades, that it represents a perfect example of something that is beyond the ability to adapt and as a consequence comprehend, if not in its current form, in its implications for the vast majority of people. And even very smart people fall into the trap of deifying AI, of making gods out of AI. And I am not against doing that metaphorically, to talk about godlike creatures that are going to walk the earth when we create artificial super intelligence. It will be similar to the experience that ancient Greeks may have had when they were taught to interpret phenomena in the world around them, attributing them to acts of Zeus or any other gods of their pantheon. And it was necessary because they didn't have other tools with which they could interpret what was happening. So when we are going to be around artificial super intelligences doing things that would take us thousands of years to build the tools needed to interpret, we will be absolutely justified in saying, well, these are acts of God. But we are not there yet, and that is not going to be an achievement. That is, if we are there ever, is going to be an act of giving up, of handing over the ability to shape the world and to interpret reality to those that actively participate, either because they are born artificial superintelligences or because they are humans empowered by technological tools to the point that they themselves could be unrecognizable by unenhanced humans.
Mm.
And let's assume that we get there. It is going to be a very weird world, especially for those that choose not to participate in one way or another. But right now, I don't know if it is useful to invest a lot of energy in that kind of world and how it is going to look like. We have very urgent tasks at hand, and we have to broaden and deepen the conversation on how to address those urgent tasks, which include the desire to understand if a world where artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence are featured can be shared by humans, enhanced or unenhanced. We still don't know. Is that world possible? There are things, and this is what blows my mind. There are a gazillion things we don't know about the universe. Provably, we know that we don't know, and that is already a great first step. We have even funny words for our ignorance. A couple of these dark matter, dark energy. These are the words that physicists and astronomers picked because they were sick of saying, we have no idea. We don't know.
Sounds a bit medieval.
And they just said, "Oh, what is the thing that keeps galaxies together?" Because when we count up the mass of everything we know, it is not enough, and the galaxies rotate at a speed such that they would fly apart. It's dark matter. And what is dark matter? Well, we don't know, but it is dark matter. Or on the other side, we are observing that the rate of expansion of the universe is actually increasing. So what is it that is pushing the universe so that rather than slowing down and then collapsing on itself, right now it looks like it is expanding at an increasing rate? Oh, it is dark energy. And what is dark energy? Well, we don't know. So already the fact that we know that we don't know is wonderful. It's great. It's a great first step. But the thing that for me is worrisome is what Enrico Fermi, as I imagine, having a cigarette with Oppenheimer in the New Mexico desert, taking a break from building the atomic bomb, and having a conversation came up with, and that is what today we call the Fermi paradox. In this incredibly crisp desert air, they would see as many stars as you could anywhere, including the Milky Way beautifully cutting across the dark night. And Fermi would just turn around and ask Oppenheimer, where the fuck is everyone? Dove cazzo sono tutti quanti? In Italian, maybe. And Oppenheimer would turn around and said, you're right, where are they? And the reason why the question is reasonable, discarding those who have easy answers and saying, oh no, the aliens are here, they are anally probing us, and they are dissected and the various secret government laboratories. I wish those are wonderful easy answers, and if we had them and they were right, that would be as cool as seeing ghosts or whatever other psychokinesis and all those kinds of things. I wish they were true. I think that the universe is very, very, very complicated, and we don't know so many things, because if and when we achieve the ability to travel among the stars, as we are now, and potentially our descendants would be at an arbitrary degree of power and transformation, whether biological, mechanical, artificial intelligences of incredible power, over the course of merely 1 million years, we would transform the Milky Way to such a degree that a hypothetical astronomer pointing a telescope in our direction would shout out, calling the colleagues to look into the telescope, because the Milky Way is blossoming. Something is happening in the Milky Way. What can it be? What is there? That which we would do is something we cannot observe in no galaxy, having mapped and analyzed the infrared footprint of more than 100,000 of them. So either the universe works very differently from how we understand it, or there are mechanisms that stop crazies like us to do the things we would do. But the question of the Fermi paradox is very, very deeply linked with the future of how humans and artificial intelligences can coexist, not only on Earth, but in the solar system and beyond.
Well, this is a wonderful answer, and I thought to say this already when we met in Dubai because I got a flavor of that. But I did a collaboration with a conductor and composer called Leif Segerstam. This is 2010 or something like that, and relating a little bit to your thing about what is relevant about the religion and their literal or sort of different interpretations. One thing is kind of certain that they have many archetypes inside of them, and I do find it quite interesting that you could have very well been a conductor or a composer as an artist, because the answers that you come up with start like a symphony, and they have these ups and downs before you bring them together, and you have a very similar energy about you as Leif does, and he's a master of his craft. He really is considered one of the 5 top conductors in the world, or at least was 10 years ago. And this brings me a little bit back to something that you said, and why I did my first collection via AI, because I was wondering how to do it. And you mentioned these conspiracies, and I was fascinated by them before much more than these days. But it does seem to me that there are conspiracies, and some of them have happened and have been confirmed that they happened. And then there are very strange people who believe that the Earth is flat, which is another fascinating paradox, which I find super, super funny. If for nothing else, let's say for the reason that in Egypt, long ago, it used to be that the cosmology, very sophisticated cosmology, was for the elites, but the priesthood maintained flat Earth for the peasants, so to speak, because they could tell them that the sun is not going to rise unless if you pay us taxes. So this is why there was a class system in how to keep the flat Earth and the cosmos apart from one another. But now it does seem that many people can't handle the cosmos that you were just describing. So they kind of now, even though the information is readily available to them, they demand to be the center of the universe in this kind of flat Earth manner, which I find really, really funny, actually. But going back into those conspiracies, I do see that in the cultural context, quite often it is that we have the left politically and we have the right politically, and then now we have many let's say someone like Russell Brand, this comedian. I'm not sure if you're aware of him, but he's a sort of standard lefty who's also anti-establishment. So he speaks in a very different kind of manner, and he's quite the revolutionary at the same time, and he has a general point of view. Or then you have someone like Ben Shapiro, who would be an establishment right-wing figure. But I found it very bizarre that all of a sudden Russell Brand, in our current cultural context, was being called a right-wing extremist simply because he was challenging some of the sort of narratives coming from the establishment. And I made this AI series where I took these famous people who are in the culture wars from many different sides, and I just added the axiom of establishment and anti-establishment. And all of a sudden, the cultural map, what we have right now, started making much, much more sense. And it's been a lot of fun to play about with the image of these now very famous people embroiled in these very heated topics, because I'm not exactly just 180 reversing them. I'll tell you an example. One of the very, very divisive figures at the moment, I don't know if you've come across this guy called Andrew Tate.
I have seen people commenting on him in my feed, but I didn't directly looked at his message.
Okay, sure. But essentially, he's a very anti-establishment figure, and he talks about the Matrix, and he's very much more on the conspiratorial side of the arrangement of the world, and he has fast cars and beautiful women and smokes cigars and does kickboxing, all of this kind of stuff. So very high dopamine level of how he chooses to live his life, and he's been thrown into jail and back and whatever this. So what I did is that I took his image and I made him an Amish apple picker. So what's kind of funny about that is that he's still a very anti-establishment figure, but you could say that the Amish are actually more anti-establishment in the way that they actually are interacting with the system, as he calls it. But it's just a low dopamine ride. But it's something that forces you to think on these two axioms of where you're going to be placing this person, and why I'm doing this with AI, even though I'm feeding the algorithm, of course, with the idea of what it's going to generate as an image. I thought that it might offer an opportunity to laugh at the expense of the whole of the culture wars. Everyone involved. So it's like no one can easily put me in a bracket. Okay, so VESA is then this, and therefore we can negate anything that he has to say about this particular thing, because that's how this binary conversation that I mentioned to begin with, that we're becoming more robot-like, is functioning at the moment. So I'm very much keeping my own opinions about these topics to myself at the moment, because I want to have the conversation via this robotic art expression, because essentially as far as I think, what the point of why we make machines to begin with is that we would make people's lives better. We should be able to help people explore ideas and meaning and different kinds of things in the best way possible to them. And if that means that you want to be a wood carpenter, that's absolutely wonderful. But machines are here to help us be more human and not to make us more robot-like, as seems to be the case at this moment. And this leads me to the topic that I'm not sure if you got to see the video with Andrew Jones and the AI guy. Now his name escapes my mind.
Sam Altman.
Yeah, sorry, because it was such a bizarre conversation and paradoxical, because Andrew Jones has made, even his name suggests that he wants to become an android to a degree, and he's made this technology expression, and then he is considered to be in this genre of visionary art, and I do have a bit of an issue with the whole thing, because it's become a genre as opposed to something that celebrates different kinds of visions. It's been sort of circulating around itself for quite some time, not really advancing. But what I found so paradoxical about it was that what he represents as an artist, and then the kind of ferociousness that he had as resistance towards AI in that conversation. And I thought that there are so many wonderful ways that you can utilize this technology in the coming form, where we're going to be, like an artwork is going to be a world in which you're going to be immersed in this 360 kind of way. And as an artist, I don't want to be painting it pixel by pixel. I want to have a companion and an AI assistant through which I get to generate some of these worlds, and it can interact with those with deep knowledge who are going to be coming inside of this artwork, to help them have different kinds of experiences that they also get to interact with and choose which kind of experience they would like it to have a flavor of. So going from what I think should be there, how do you see this thing happening with artists and creatives with AI? We now have something like DALL-E and a few others, but where it's going is going to be mesmerizing. But what do you see as the next step of what's going to happen with it?
Again, in the Middle Ages, guilds were set up in order to regulate and allow what the people investing a lot of energy and effort of acquiring a skill could do, and how others that were seen as outsiders who either were not born in the right place or didn't belong to the right networks or didn't, through potentially many generations, acquired the knowledge and the tools that were also kept secret, could do. And so if you were in a guild, you were allowed to express your particular craft and trade. If you were not in that guild, then you couldn't. And if you tried, you would be punished. So since then, supposedly, the ability to experience as well as to express activities in many different ways, but especially in the arts, should be available to everyone and anyone. And artists should be the first to recognize how empowering and how uplifting this channel of self-expression and self-actualization is. And they do, or at least many of them provide lip service to the notion, but deep down, as it is very human to be, feel threatened by the changes, and they feel unsure in their position, regardless of how solid it looks like from the outside, whatever degree of success they acquired. And the current situation is really a dam bursting of an incredible production coming from unsanctioned sources, coming from the unwashed masses that didn't suffer through the decades-long training that the select number of people labeled artists through some official process because they exhibited in the Gallery X, or they are represented by Agent Y, or their work was auctioned by a given auction house. Well, everyone else shouldn't have the ability and the permission to use that label. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Now, of course, there will be new ways to evaluate what is valuable because it's unique, potentially scarce, and there will be things that are depreciated through their extreme abundance. An example of this often cited is how Napoleon would have a dinner and the people farthest from him would eat with silver utensils, closer to him with gold, but only he could eat with aluminum utensils, which was the scarcest of the metals and the most precious and the most unique and the most representative of his imperial sanctity. Well, today, thanks to technological advances, aluminum is everywhere. It stopped to be precious, but it didn't stop to be valuable. Actually, its value to human civilization has become enormously higher because of all the things that we can do thanks to aluminum that wouldn't be possible if we didn't make it abundant.
Mm.
So just how radio cheapened music, literally, because you couldn't afford to hire an orchestra to play in your humble house while you were carving wood or farming or collecting your corn harvest or whatever you were doing. And yeah, it didn't happen. The music people had were the things today we call the folk songs that they were singing to each other in order to have some music in their lives.
So, sorry to interrupt your flow for a little bit, but I just did something quite funny a few days ago, in which I made this video of myself when I was in the studio painting this one sort of Egyptian goddess thing that I did with the daughter of a famous Egyptologist, and I made this speeded up video. And what I did with Suno AI, which is this super impressive AI music platform, I just typed in a few words of me painting an Egyptian goddess and make it into a rap song and about these couple of topics. And I'm not saying it's the best rap song in the world, but I would say at the very least it's a very good average rap song that came about. So I commissioned essentially AI to make a one-of-one song for a small snippet of me just working in my studio to be shared on social media. And I would argue that not even an indulgent king would have done something like that, to commission an artwork or a piece of music solely to entertain the fact that I would share this little clip of me working. That did blow my mind a little bit. So my apologies for stopping your flow. But
no, thank you. Because yes, exactly. Radio made music abundant from a consumption point of view. Before, neither production nor consumption were abundant before radio. Radio enabled anyone to listen to music. And the syndicate, the guild of player piano tape producers tried to make radio illegal because that was the mechanism at the time of mechanically reproduced music through player pianos that people could have if they didn't have the money for a human musician to play the piano. Mm. And they were not successful. The Supreme Court of the United States stopped their effort of making the radio illegal. Today, generative music is making the ability to create music, produce music, abundant as well, not only consume it. And the same with pictures. And we are already seeing it during these weeks. And next month will be better, and next year will be better. And my son is working in the Hollywood industry. He is a visual effect artist, and I am every day trying to convince him that his industry is going to radically change.
Yeah.
And he understands, at least I hope he does, because movies will become abundant, not only from the point of view of consumption, where there are so many high quality choices today that I personally am constantly raising the bar of quality, and I am still not able to dedicate enough hours in the day because I am trying to be disciplined about it, maybe watch an hour of movies or series a day, not more. Well, I am still letting great stuff slip by. And I know that unless I radically extend my life, but not even then, I will not be able to watch all of those things. So abundance of not only content that we consume, but these tools make the creation of content super abundant as well. And I cherish that, and I am feeling sorry for those artists that feel too limited in their creativity, not in doing what they know how to do, but thrive in inventing new things that these new tools make possible. Not repeating, there are so many examples of wonderful artists that have found their streak and then just kept doing what their audience wanted. And they are recognizable through their style. You can see, De Chirico as a painter. You immediately recognize a De Chirico painting, or Dali, or Vasarely, and it's okay. They lived in a time when they didn't need to constantly reinvent themselves. But today,
arguably many of the good ones did along the way up until
Picasso had many waves of different things that he did, right? So yeah. I'm not saying that no one did, but today it is a universal necessity. I think you cannot. You have to apply your creativity as an artist to yourself. You become the work of art as you come up with things that are entrancing your followers, because they are also attuned to the unexpected. Rather than recognizing you by what you were, they want to recognize you through the dynamic of what you become.
Very much so. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, and especially let me set the premise a little bit, is that we are forming a company with my wife, and we've been in the process of figuring out what that is going to look like for quite some time. And I do recognize that I'm very good at seeing where the world is going and what would be a vision for it that would be useful. And also being quite expressive within the different kind of technologies and creativity that is within my means. Now, that does not make me a great CEO. It does not make me a great COO or many of those things that naturally me forming a company would afford myself to put myself in the position of, therefore probably crippling the whole process. Now, the reason why, for example, with On Yavin from Syndica, we've had these conversations on how to do the tokenization, how to do the fundraising, how to do the white paper, what the idea is, and how to package it together is quite counterintuitive to me. Many of those things that are super important for the structure of a company or something like that are just not something that I'm very good at. And especially at this point in time when we had this conversation in Dubai and you told me about Actioneer, of how AI can be something that would help a person like me, or many, especially artists, because I'm assuming some of them will be in the audience here, could probably greatly benefit from the company that you're putting together. And of course, not only artists, so many different other people whose first primarily, how do you say it? Premium, let's say, instinct is not to put together a company in the most competent way or write these white papers. So how could Actioneer help people like me?
The world is complex, and we need all the help we can get in order to decode it and to find fruitful, purpose-driven life that we feel can provide dignity for ourselves, our families, our communities, and really make us thrive. And it is a bit maybe paradoxical, but it has been also the case in the past. The very tools that are driving the changes, that are stressing us out and are making these challenges we are facing even more critical, are the answer that we can leverage if we use those tools well. So AI is now changing the world in many ways, changing the world of art, as we mentioned, and AI can help people experiment and analyze and decode and just structure their efforts efficiently and effectively to a much larger degree than before. Now, a lot of people, really a lot of people, have been taught, and they have meekly accepted, because they respect their families, they respect the religion they were born into, they respect the social structure that supports them, that their purpose in life is to get a job, work all day, all their life, and then die. And to these people, it is really hard to then be thrown in a situation where their job is not secure anymore. They look back and idealize a past, let's say the 50s in the US, when, oh yeah, the male could go to work, they would buy a house, they would have 2 cars and the garage, and they would cut the lawn on the weekend, and the kids would go to school and then to college, and it would be such an idyllic world. Now, obviously, that is already a lie, because so many people didn't live that, just a few. But today, we cannot aspire to live that either. We cannot go back. It never existed. It cannot exist. It shouldn't exist today either. So who are the people that are crazy enough to experiment and experience what could drive a better degree of adaptability and resilience in a rapidly changing world? Well, those are the founders of startups. And in many places in the world, people still look with suspicion to the Silicon Valley startup model. And if we equate it exclusively with the VC driven growth and the financial exits and the success of becoming a unicorn, then they are right. That is not something that everyone should or could aspire to build in Europe or Asia or Africa. And even in California, the natural outcome is that your startup dies, and more often than people care to admit, you physically die as well in the effort. And the Californian society just accepts that as the natural consequence of daring to win. But discarding that pathological extreme, the part of becoming entrepreneurial rather than a cog in a machine, a very disciplined worker in a job, independently if we are talking about a factory or an office, which are going to go extinct. Office jobs are going extinct rapidly today because of specialized AI doing the work better, whether in marketing or sales or product development or coding or anything. It is an extinction event. And factory jobs are going to go extinct similarly through the explosion of humanoid robots that we are going to see over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. So what remains is exactly our human ability and human desire to build a life of meaning, laughing to the assumption that our value is equal to the to the economic value of our job, as expressed by the salary that we receive as a stamp of approval in our cozy place that has been defined by society. The kind of revolution that is coming is a revolution of the mind, is a revolution of social organization, where it is universally recognized that the use of a human life is more than not finding a job and then dying. And that entrepreneurial spirit is what Actioneer supports. Through sessions where you establish your challenge, you analyze it, you prioritize your goals, you commit to their execution by a deadline, and then you come back to confirm that you were able to, or to describe the reason why you were not, and you just keep repeating the cycle in different facets of the entrepreneurial challenges that you find. And this has already been available through mentorship and advisory and coaching to a select few lucky people that could either afford it, or they went through the process of being admitted to an incubator or an accelerator that were proud of how few of the applicants they would admit in their cohorts, rather than being ashamed or of how impossible to scale their model would be. And AI-powered coaching, which is how Actioneer fulfills its mission, is what democratizes this kind of support. It makes it super abundant so that everyone can take advantage of what Silicon Valley, for example, in its own unique ecosystem, offered to startup founders. And yeah, artists also belong to exclusive networks where you get all kind of support. And if you are not part of that network, you don't get support. Well, Actioneer wants to democratize and make abundant that kind of component to the success as well. Now, the beauty of it is that it makes you more acutely aware and responsible for your own trajectory. You have so many new degrees of freedom that you gain in order to design a life that is beautiful, and it gives satisfaction, it gives dignity, it gives flourishing to you and your surroundings. And in the case of art, literally makes the world more beautiful through music or visual expression, or new forms that we will invent. You can become an artist of bioprinting the kinds of plants that grow in space, and over the course of 3 centuries build a megastructure in orbit around Jupiter, that people build spaceships just to be able to experience through senses that they genetically modify themselves so that they are well adapted to actually experience that kind of work of art. whatever crazy science fiction example I could come up with, I am sure that people will ready to define themselves through even more amazing ways of experience their life, and so we are now designing the first versions of what will be used by whatever number of people, but we believe that together with every other similar effort that is happening at the same time, platforms like Actioneer are going to be universal. Everyone, just like today, exaggerating a bit, but we are close. Everyone on the planet has access to a computer or to a smartphone and to internet. Some don't even wonder, they just have it. Others still need some effort in order to concretely leverage these tools. But the number of people who categorically do not have this kind of access ever is diminishing, very luckily becoming close to zero at a rapid pace, because these tools are just so fundamental a part of our modern life and what it means to be human in the second half of the third decade of the first century of the third millennium. And similarly to that, the types of tools like Actioneer that support you in your quest of asking yourself, what can I become? Where is the magical overlap between my talents and my passions and what the world values? Not only economically, which can be a natural consequence of what I do, but really what is recognized as making the world a better place. That kind of search is part of the journey, and that is what Actioneer wants to help everyone to be able to find.
Well, David, you are a symphony. It's a great pleasure to talk with you. I just say that I think it was Picasso who said that everyone is born an artist, but then it gets taken out of you along the way. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't think everyone is born an artist, but certainly if you don't become an entrepreneur whilst being an artist, you won't be an artist for very long. That's more true than ever now in the time what we're living, and that kind of a tool. I'm very eager to be one of the guinea pigs in order to help my own efforts in this kind of marriage of business and creativity, because I don't have a plan B. This is all chips in and going full steam ahead, and it's looking very good, but nothing is guaranteed. So everything that helps that to go into its completion to whatever form is more than welcome. But I'm sure we could talk endlessly, and I'm already very, very grateful for your time, hoping even in some distant moment maybe we can have episode 2 of our chats, because there's still plenty to talk about. But for now, if I'll put all the links into the show notes and your website and those things, of course. But from my side, I'm very grateful for this, like I said. And if you have something that you would want to further close with, please do.
For me, these conversations are always a joy. I refine my thinking through them. So I am grateful that you give me the opportunity of articulating these things. And it has been a few months that rather than just trusting my biological wetware to retain the benefit of these iterative processes, I have been running the transcripts through AI in order to highlight things that are potentially new and interesting that I may not have said in other conversations before. Just as an example of the new kinds of powers that we are gaining almost on a daily basis. But even if this is already a joy, I also very much like when readers reach out. Sorry, listeners and people who watch the video of the recording. I'm saying readers because I also wrote a book about AI and how it changes the world and impacts society and us individually. The title is Something New. You can find it on Amazon, obviously, in the various editions. But regardless, if our conversation made you watching this think, if you agree or disagree or have something of your own to say, well, feel free to reach out. But I also invite you to express it, even if not directly to me or to VESA, express it to contribute to the global conversation that needs to broaden and deepen. There are so many things to say, so much of a complex and nuanced consensus that we need to develop on how we go about our future. So I am really looking forward to understand the thinking of the people who may watch this.
Equally so. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.